Okay. Let's take a walk down memory lane again. So, today I wanted to sit down and discuss a what I think is a hot topic among our community. And I want to go ahead and preference that this is not to ruffle feathers. This is just fascination on my part, and it does take a good relevant place in my life and in my practice currently because, as a lot of you know, I have recently been working my butt off on a business that Ravenflower and I share, and also my personal business is being remodeled, if you will. So, this subject is a subject that I've actually been wanting to talk about for quite some time on YouTube, but it was such a hot button topic, I didn't realize how hot it was until I started making posts about it and being a little more public about my thoughts towards the subject and questions that I had. So let's go ahead. I've got my Jade Dragon t shirt on, I've got my green tea sitting with me. Let's talk about the ethics of the witch and charging for your practice. My first step towards anything that I do, especially when it's professional, is I do research. I have a lot of friends who are in the community who charge for services or who charge for pagan or witchy goods, if you will. So, one of my first steps into researching this topic was literally just going public with it and asking Facebook friends and social media friends their thoughts on charging for witchcraft. I think one of the first posts that I had made about it was on Facebook, and it was in 2019. It was like July of 2019. So if y'all are interested in seeing that post, you can feel free, if you have me on Facebook, to go back and check that out. But again, I want to make sure that I preference here that this is just a topic to discuss. I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I'm not saying that either way is right or wrong. This is just an interesting topic for me to think about and consider. I asked a very specific question. How do you feel about charging for spell work? It was almost evenly split, but I feel like the majority of the people who responded on that post were for charging for spell work, but there were quite a lot of people who were against it in their personal belief system. Quite a few people were split in a way that they were expressing that while yes, they do believe you can charge for spell work and they don't have a problem with other people charging, they themselves would not do so, which I found very interesting. I do want to go ahead and apologize as well. You probably hear my laundry machines going, and that's because I have shit to do, which also will tie into this subject. So I took some notes based on some of the responses that I got. I do want to go ahead and say, if you're looking for reasons not to charge for witchcraft, this probably is not going to be the video for you. And I'm only saying that honestly because I personally did not find any reasons not to charge for witchcraft based off of the responses that were on my social media posts alone anyway. So a lot of the reasons for not charging for witchcraft is simply because it's unethical. At least that's the argument that I've seen over the years. It's just simply not ethical. Other than that, there's no tangible reason not to charge for witchcraft. Out of the answers that I got of people who were for charging for witchcraft, I found it very interesting that a lot of witches or practitioners felt that it was important to mention that yes, they may charge for witchcraft, but they only do so in person. So a large majority of practitioners are actually against paying someone over social media or paying a witch that's online or through video conference, that sort of thing. Well, I shouldn't say in video conference, because then we get into the questioning of, do you consider a video conference in person? Some people do. But a lot of people express that they only take payment in person, so cash only, and they only do the work in person, which I found very interesting, but also understandable. I also had a few people come forward and they told me they will only pay, or they only understand charging someone if it's completely custom work. For example, pre-sold kits that you could buy at a shop or online, they said they do not like those because you really don't know what you're paying for. I agree with this to some extent, because with that you're getting into how much of the work, the actual physical labor, is including the actual working for the spell kit, and how much of that is actual time consuming and grueling work. This is one reason why I don't really love the idea of subscription boxes. But that's just me. I do think they're a really good way to make money, but the time and the energy that goes into them, I fear would turn me personally, it would be more of a job. And that's one thing that you want to avoid, in my opinion, with witchcraft, is turning it into like a grueling 9 to 5 sort of thing, because that can hinder your craft. I feel like it should be a job that you work with your inner child and your inner soul and higher self with in order to be effective. So that's very important to me. I also have a note here that some are okay with it, with charging for witchcraft, but rather than take money, they ask them to pay it forward. So in other words, rather than exchange energetically through money, which I thought was really interesting, quite a few people were like, money is an exchange of energy, and that's what's important. As long as there's a give and a take, that's what's important. There's a balance. And I thought that was really interesting to think about it in that way. And this person, or these people, worded it the same way. Some are okay with it, but rather than take money, they ask them to pay it forward. So they may offer services or spell work or magic, their workings, to people if they need it. However, rather than ask for payment, they'll say, can you just pay it forward to the next person along the road? That way that energy is still, that give and take is still there, and creating some sort of balance, which I find very interesting. Some people also said that yes, absolutely, they will charge online. They will take PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, that sort of thing. But they said that if they do that, they don't necessarily share the recipes or the entire work. A lot of people were very dead set against sharing their recipes and their work, which I think is really interesting as well, because that can branch into the same conversation as like with my Book of Shadows that I share through YouTube. A lot of people don't like that my Book of Shadows is shared publicly. And some people are dead set against that. I've even had people comment on my videos where they've said I'm not a real witch because I share my Book of Shadows on YouTube.
Witches get to do all kinds of stuff when they're 13. Just because your grandmother said that you're a witch doesn't make you one.
Obviously, I don't want to get into that sort of thing, but if someone tells you that you're not a real witch because of XYZ, I don't prefer that conversation. So a lot of people were okay with charging as long as they weren't sharing absolutely everything involving the work, which I also understand. It's like having family recipes leaked out online. That's not fun. And it's not so much the fear necessarily of people taking your things, even though that's a legitimate fear. Someone could definitely take your work and use it as their own. But also, it's just for me as a Cancerian sun, it's more for the sentimental value of it, I think, adds to the magic. It's yours. You don't want that to leak out. That's just my opinion. Another argument or discussion that I thought was very compelling and which shaped my views on the subject personally is service and time is money. So the people that made comments in regards to this, akin to witchcraft to other services like baking or making things, crafting things. It is a craft. And with that being said, they said those things are services and those people charge for services, and you don't hear, people bitching and complaining about them charging for their services. You don't expect a baker to make bread for free. This really compelled me personally in this subject because it made the most sense to me mundanely as well as spiritually. I think that it's also very important for there to be an even exchange of energy. In that, I agree that that energy can also fall under the trade of time for money. And I guess I also feel this way because I personally am like all over the place. I've got a lot of projects that I'm working on, and I'm trying to balance work life and also YouTube and also the personal businesses that I have, but also muggle working, the muggle job, if you will. And it's hard. It's not easy, and it is not for the faint of heart. And it is easy to get burnt out on it all. And I have gotten burnt out on it all before, and it's not fun because, it just isn't cool. My point with this is also that even though people want free content, people also want your videos to look a certain way. They want your work to look a certain way.
Please tap these cards. Thank you. Says here you're having problems at work.
That's apparent in even my book of, how to make a Book of Shadows video, which is one of my top viewed, one of the most viewed videos that I have on the internet right now. And not that numbers is a huge factor in this subject, but there's quite a few people who complained openly about the way that it was made. And what's funny is that is a legit, if it wasn't for that video being made, I could have gotten a lot more sales in the books that I make because I could monopolize that knowledge and keep it from people and just sell the books for hundreds of dollars. But I don't believe that that's right. I believe that witchcraft is something that we can all definitely do, but some of us may not be as good at it, or some of us may not be blessed with the time or the energy to do the witchcraft. I am a believer that one should not work while being sick, whether that be muggle job or, witchy jobs or witchcraft. Workings are work, and I don't think that you should do any of that while you're sick. You should give your body and soul time to heal, because then you get into traumatizing things, and that's not fun either. What if somebody is very sick and their personal belief is in witchcraft, but they don't feel like they have the energy to put forth to do the workings for healings? I feel like they should be able to have that right to go to somebody and pay them, if that's what's easiest for them, to do workings for them and to heal them or their family or what have you. Some witches don't like to just add their energy to anything for no return. Something that my fiance keeps mentioning is he equates it to like a cup. How can you keep pouring your water into someone else's cup if eventually your cup is going to run out because you're not getting water in your cup? And it's that's, again, the most mundane way that I can explain it, and I think that this can fit into that explanation. You know, how can you afford to keep giving out your energy if you don't get something in return? And money is an energy exchange. It's just a more mundane, tangible way to exchange energy. And then I had a few people who made really good points, bringing up the old ways, if you will, which is one should always come to a witch's door with a gift, which is something that I have always loved the idea of, but not just for, you know, the muggle folk or the non-magical people, but I think witches should practice this as well. When you come to another witch's home, even if it's just for a bit, incense and things are a very cheap gift that you can give your friend witches. And I feel like this would be a wonderful exchange of energy. And it's honestly tradition in a lot of old traditions of magic, but also non-magic folk. You know, you always had to give a witch something. There's one saying, and I'm probably gonna butcher it, but you should give a witch money, sex, or death. Or was it food, sex, or death? You know, when you go back and you think of our ancestors, you know, which I also personally believe that anybody who goes back far enough is going to run into a magical practitioner eventually. Some people may have to go back a little bit further than others. You know, everybody at one point was a believer in magic. And that's why they call it the old ways. Those people that did magic workings after Sky Daddy beliefs became a thing and, you know, witches were persecuted. Do you think that these people did these things for free? Do you think that these people who risked their lives, you know, your ancestors who risked their lives to practice magic, do you think they did it for free? Do you think that in the medieval times when they could have been burned at the stake or drowned or stoned or tortured, hung at the gallows, do you think that they did these workings and these healings for free? Because I'll tell you right now, they did not. They would not risk their lives for nothing, for just the knowledge of being the cunning man or woman in the village. They did these things to make a living because they, just like everybody else, had to pay taxes. You know, they, just like everybody else, had to eat and drink and find ways to obtain those things. I think it's really funny and kind of interesting that nowadays people are so dead set against charging for their practice. Why do people feel like they can't charge for their practice? Why do they feel like it's unethical to charge for witchcraft? There's a page in my Book of Shadows that is a law in my Book of Shadows, which I found I need to really revamp because there's... Earlier on, I thought I would keep my Wiccan roots in the book, which I'm still thinking I'm going to do, but I think it would be a lot more enlightening to later generations or later readers of the book to see my personal notes on top of the Wiccan root sort of things, because, you know, I don't hide it that, you know, my first step into witchcraft was Wicca, because it was very popular at the time, and it was also something tangible that was not just me making something up in my head, which is what I was told for many, many, many years as a kid. So it was the first thing that I saw that other people in the world were experiencing the same things that I was, without me making up stories. And so, recognizing that that line was in my book, I was like, where did I get this line? And instantly I remembered that it's in a Scott Cunningham book. And I love Scott Cunningham. I believe if you're going to read any Wiccan writer, you should read Scott Cunningham. It's very important to take into consideration that obviously his books were written at a different time, for one, so culturally they are no longer adequate. I knew it was in one of three books. It was either in his Book of Shadows book, or it was in his Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner. The easiest one in which I found it was Living Wicca, which is the sequel to Wicca, which are two very, again, I would highly recommend these books, but as with any book out there, or any bit of information, no matter where you get it, if you're first starting out, I recommend that you get beginner books from all over and that you read them and you discern what's right or wrong for yourself. But in this book, the first passage that I find in regards to charging for witchcraft, if you will, is on page 142, and it's under use of magic. And it says, and I quote, generally states that magic is not to be worked for pay, as it could lead to performing destructive rites. Magic is also never to be used to boost one's pride or to cause harm in any way. However, some sets of laws do allow Wiccans to use the power, meaning magic, to prevent or restrain others from causing harm. So that's the first passage. I also find it interesting that he does not explain whether or not those are his personal beliefs. So there's that. But moving over just 2 pages afterwards to page 146, we have a list of laws that are known as the Law of the Power, which is the exact wording that's in my Book of Shadows. I think I tweaked these to my liking a little bit early on when I first started practicing, but yeah. I'm going to look at the 4th law on the list, and it says here, it is unwise to accept money for use of the power, for it quickly controls its taker. Be not as those of other religions. That I find really interesting, and the fact, and this is my point of that, is that this is coming from an author of a Wiccan-based religion book, or Wiccan-based religious book, I should say. To me, writing a book of pagan knowledge and teaching people how to, which also part of the laws in that is, teach everybody who's willing to learn, yada, yada, yada. But to me, that's charging for magic. Your knowledge in magic is still magic, in my opinion. If you're charging for classes, you're also charging for witchcraft in and of itself, because you're empowering other people to do the work themselves. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, personally. I do think there's something wrong with charging to teach people, or charging for spellcraft and turning around and telling others that you shouldn't charge, for their own work. With all of this being said, I know that there's probably a lot of questions out there in regards to my personal business, as well as my business with Ravenflower, as to why we charge, and why certain witches, or practitioners, readers, whoever they are, why they charge for the services that they do. If you think they should be free, that's great. But also, if you think that these services should be free, I highly encourage you to sit in front of a camera for at least 30 minutes to an hour to record video on a certain subject, and then go back and edit it for another hour or 2, just using YouTube as an example, and tell me that you wouldn't rather spend your time on that with something else. Because it's hard work. It's work, and it's hard, and it's difficult, and that's just the bottom line. I'm not looking to be a huge teacher or anything through my videos that I post on YouTube. I'm not looking for any payment for that. However, I don't think that it is wrong of me, personally, to charge for my time with more specific workings or more specific things that I do from here on out. So I want to make sure that that is out there in the open, and I just want to be transparent and honest with everybody. And I just, like everyone else in the world, need to make a living because witches, let me tell you, rent's expensive. It's a thing. I don't think it's very fair of the community to expect handouts anymore. Burnout is real, and your time and your energy is worth it. So for those of my friends in the community, or anybody watching this who's in the community, who's doing research as I have done, charge for your services. If you're going to take my advice, do it. That's my standpoint on it. I'm not saying that you're wrong or you're not a witch if you don't charge. You know, I personally don't think that it's anybody's business who decides who is a witch and who isn't. Your practice is your own. You know, it's a word that has to be reclaimed by you. So if you meet your criteria to be a witch, then by golly, you're a witch. And that's just how I feel. What have you? If I'm not a witch in your tradition, then I don't want to be a part of your tradition. It's that simple. So I hope you all enjoyed this topic. I would love to hear your all's opinions. Please put them in the comment section below. There's no judgment here. And be sure to check us out for Drunken Divinations. Not this Saturday, but next. We'd love to see you in the chat. Please share, like, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. I'll see you when I see you. Bye.